Right. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone for attending the BASE Initiative workshop today. We hope that over the course of the next 3 days, you guys will be prepared with the knowledge and lessons in order to prepare you guys for your scholarship application process. So before we begin, we would like to take this opportunity to congratulate each and every one of you for achieving such a huge milestone in your life, and that is completing your SPM examinations. So before we begin, let's start by introducing the speakers for today. So I'll start off with myself. My name is Hana Zahra, and I am a Bank Negara Malaysia Kijang scholar, currently pursuing A-levels at College Yayasan UEM, and I plan to read economics in the future. I'll pass it on to Zach.
Hi everyone, my name is Zachary, and I'm currently a Yayasan UEM scholar. Like Hana, I'm doing my A-levels at College Yayasan UEM, and I'm planning to pursue finance. And lastly, we have Karim.
Hi guys, my name is Adrina Karim. I am a Shell Scholarship Fund scholar. And just like the two of them, I'm also pursuing A-levels at College Yayasan UEM. I plan to further my studies in chemical engineering soon. Thank you.
All right, so without further ado, we will begin with the first part of today's workshop, and that is Introduction to Scholarships. All right, so what exactly is a scholarship? A scholarship is a financial grant given by a sponsoring body to sponsor those for their education. Now, there's two different types of scholarships that you guys have to know, and the first one is a loan, and the second is a sponsorship. So what exactly is the difference? Loans are basically financial grants where candidates are required to pay back the scholarship body once they are done with the course. And examples of loans are these convertible loans such as under MARA and JPA, whereas for sponsorships, which encompass actually most of the scholarship bodies, for instance, Bank Negara, Shell, with these sponsorships, you are required to pay back the sponsoring bodies in the form of a bond. And how you do that is you have to work with them through a certain number of years. All right. So this differs, of course, and it depends on the condition of your offer. So for instance, Bank Negara, it's a 1:2 ratio where you basically study for, say, 5 years. If you study for 5 years, you have to pay back your bond for 10 years. But it differs because in the case of, like, for instance, Khazanah, it's in a 1:1 ratio where you study for, say, 5 years and you pay back that bond for 5 years. All right. So next, we've got two types of sponsorships that you guys need to know. This is very important as well as you are applying to know the difference between a merit-based and a need-based scholarship. A merit-based scholarship is awarded based on academic, athletic, and artistic merits, and these also encompass most of the sponsorships, such as Yayasan Khazanah, Shell, Bank Negara, whereas for need-based, it is dependent on the person's income criterion. And that would be, for instance, Yayasan Sangdarbi. Now, this is not to say that merit-based scholarships do not look at your financial background at all. They still do that, but one of the main criterion is your merit background and your achievements. But they do take into account your financial background and your family's income. All right. So next one. Now, so you're done with SPM, right? And now it's time to apply for scholarships. Where should you start? You've got to start off by checking the websites of your scholarship bodies. And from there, there's usually a scholarship portal, and that is where you start applying. So we would suggest that you guys basically look through each and every scholarship portal and create a list basically of everything that portal, that the scholarship body requires you to submit. So this would fall under, of course, your application preparation. For instance, preparing your documents, your personal documents, of course, you're compiling your certificates, building your CVs and resumes, which in some cases they require you to submit. And of course, the most important part is writing your essays. And in addition to that, you also definitely have to do research on what course you intend to pursue. Now, I know you guys just finished SPM and you still may be undecided as to what course you would like to pursue in the future. But what's most important here is that you make an informed decision when you decide what course you would like to pursue. So even though you may not be entirely sure what that course may be, you at least you feel settled knowing that you've done your research enough to make that informed decision. So, of course, browse through the web of the courses offered by that sponsoring body. for instance, whether they sponsor just pre-U or whether it's through undergraduate as well, what are the conditions and the countries offered if you pursue your undergraduate, what exactly are the requirements, your personal details needed, like I mentioned before, and of course, what body that is. And once you're done with that, you also have to be sure that you guys check your applications, make sure you proofread your essays, ensure that all personal details and information are correct. All right, so document prep. Now I'll go a bit more into detail. So your academic transcripts are very important when you're applying for your scholarships, right? So ensure that you have your SPM certificate, most importantly, your trials as well, IGCSEs if you took IGCSEs, and in some cases they also ask for your PT3 results. So please keep that in hand. And another thing is your parents' most recent salary slip. So like I mentioned before, whether it's need-based or merit-based, you would still have to provide your family's income. So ensure that you have your salary slips or your parents' EA form, and also make sure that they are certified by the executives to ensure that you have your identification documents as well. For instance, your identification card as well as your birth certificates. So this is not just for yourself, but also for your parents. And another thing to keep in mind is to have your passport size picture prepared, as well as your co-curricular certificates. Okay, moving on. So this is the compiling and verifying part. So this is most important when it comes to your certificates, because sometimes these sponsoring bodies would verify these documents, because if they're a copy, you would have to ensure that they're legitimate, right? So you can get the verification from government officials or secondary school principals, native customary leaders, mayors of local town councils, or commissioners of both. Okay, moving on. Another thing that you guys have to ensure is when it comes to arranging your certificates. Now, this is a very important part in your application process, of course. So, okay, some scholarship bodies will require you to submit only a selected number of certificates. And this is where quality over quantity comes into play, because you would have to basically compress your files, and most scholarship portals actually have a limit as to how big of a file size you're allowed to submit. So it's important that you really select the ones that you want to showcase and the ones that really present yourself the best. So the recommendations here, of course, is to try to cover maybe a diverse range of things. For instance, academic, leadership roles, or science and maths competitions, writing and speaking, or even your involvement in sports or clubs. All right. So it's best as well if you guys manage to arrange your certificates or according to a certain order, just so that it's easier for the scholarship providers to review your application, basically. And this can be done either through by level of achievement or from gold to bronze. All right. So now is the scanning, converting, and compressing part. So as I mentioned earlier on, most scholarship portals usually have a limit, right, as to how big of a file size you can submit. So it's important that you basically make sure it can cater to that file size. And okay, in terms of scanning your certificates, if you use an iPhone, you can actually use your Notes app, because there's already a built-in scanner there, and that was what I used when I was scanning mine. But if you don't, then you can still use Cam Scanner, or if you prefer something else, you can use NoteBlock, as long as you manage to scan it. Even a printer is fine. So converting and compressing, you can even use I Love PDF or Small PDF. There are various websites that you can use to convert or compress your documents. So make sure that your documents are reduced, like I said, to the file size, because there is a file size limit. And you can use www.onlineconvert as well. So just to recap, make sure that when you guys first start applying, that you check for each and every scholarship body what their requirements are. Create a list for that. Keep in mind the deadlines as well, because you do not want to do it last minute, and you want to ensure that you have everything prepared. And also one more thing, when it comes to the application process, like I said, it's in a portal, right? So it's much easier if you have everything prepared and keyed all at once, rather than opening the portal, signing in, and then coming back to fill it in just because you may have missing details. So prepare those things, and also make sure you check what is necessary. And your essay as well, you can write it outside of the website. So then you can just copy and paste it instead of writing it on that website there is. All right. So I will be passing it on to Zach to carry on to the next section.
All right, thank you so much, Hannah. First of all, I would like to congratulate you guys again for finishing your SPM, and just remember, no matter what the result, you have done your best. So now we shall go into the second part of this session, which is about CV building and interview prep. So some of you, even up till today, may not even know what a CV is, and that is fine. Like myself, I didn't know what a CV was until I started applying for scholarships. And so basically, I'm here today to help guide you, and hopefully you won't be as clueless as I was last year. So without further ado, let's go in straight. So today in this session, we'll be covering on what is a CV and how do you start writing your CV, the types of sections that you can include in your CV, the format, and some general tips and takeaways for, writing your CV. So what is a CV? Now, this is just some general information. Any information you can find online, it's literally this. So CV stands for Curriculum Vitae, which translates from Latin to your course of life. So as the name implies, you would have to try to include activities and your achievements that you have had throughout your high school life, for example, into your CV, so that whoever who's reading through your CV, for example, your recruiters or your interviewers, they would know what you've been involved in. So that is literally what a CV encompasses. So what is it used for? It's used for scholarship, application, university, and work as well. So it's technically something you'd be using throughout your whole life. So yeah, it's something very important to learn. So coming to the next part, it's also a historical document of your academic and extracurricular credentials. So you would like to include these important information within your CV as well. All right, so next we'll cover the purpose of your CV. Technically, in a CV, you'd like to showcase your personality. And what I mean by that is by showing your interviewers or your recruiters who you really are. So in this particular CV, you would like to highlight any outstanding achievement for your own personal branding. I'm sorry. Yeah. So you would really want to pick and choose all the activities that you've had, which really highlights who you are as a person. And I know that some of us or some of you guys here have many activities that you have done throughout high school. Later in the format, I'll be telling you how long a CV should be. So earlier on now, I would advise you to, just try to pick and choose your highest achievements or the activities you think is most important to your personal development. So this CV also should differentiate you from other applicants, and it technically gives your admissions officer or your employer or your recruiter, for example, in a scholarship application, the first impression of who you are professionally and personally. Okay, so now moving on to how do I start? Now, all of us may not have had the chance to go for workshops, in high school, because generally people really we don't have workshops for CV building in high school. But I do know some schools that have CV building workshops for the students. But anyways, if you are here today and you still are unsure on what a CV encompasses, how you're supposed to write it, how you're supposed to start listing down, these 3 steps is crucial for you. So firstly, I would encourage you to actually list down all your secondary school activities. And basically this would be just like a draft. You list down everything, and it doesn't matter if it was something as small as winning a competition in school, or to something as big as winning something, a sports medal for the country. So just list everything down. It could be positions you held or achievements and activities that you've helped organize in school. Literally anything, you can list it down first. Then the second step is to decide on the type of CV. Issue. So I shall be presenting again from this slide. All right, so we'll cover this slide again since there was a tech issue. So what is a CV? The purpose of a CV. So technically a CV is meant to showcase your personality. It's your interviewer or your recruiter's first window into who you are as a person. So what you should be doing in the CV is to highlight any outstanding achievement for your own personal branding to show who you really are as a person. So a CV also helps differentiate you from other applicants, and it gives your admissions officer / employer / recruiter the first impression of who you are professionally and personally. Now, moving on to the next slide. I do know some schools which did have workshops for their students on how to start writing their CVs. But if you're like me, who did not have the chance to attend any of these workshops, and until now, at this stage of the presentation, you're still unsure to how you're supposed to start, how you're supposed to compose the CV of yours, fret not, because I'm here to give you this easy 3-step guide to help you start writing your CV. So for the first thing, I would really advise you to list down all your secondary school activities. It doesn't matter how small or how big it was. It could be something as small as winning something in school to winning a medal for the country. It doesn't really matter as long as you just list down every single activity or achievement that you've had in high school. The second step is to decide on the type of CV. So for CVs, there are generally 2 different types of CVs. First one is chronological CV. The second one is a functional CV. Usually for scholarship applicants, what I did was I used a functional CV, because a chronological one, as the name implies, would be done according to year. So for example, you in Form 1 you did X, Form 2 you did Y, and Form 3 you did Z, and so forth. You would list down your achievements according to year. So Form 1, this is what I did. Form 2, this is what I did. Form 3, this is what I did. But for a functional CV, the main difference is basically how you arrange your achievements. So for one, it's not according to time. And second, you would be trying to categorize those achievements or activities that you had into sections. So for example, I'm going to use a really extreme example. So for example, you're applying to be a CEO of a company. You wouldn't want to include your high school achievements like, oh, I won a gold medal in MSSM. You wouldn't want to be including that because it's not relevant. But even though it's a achievement, it's not relevant. So a functional CV highlights particular skills or particular traits that you have. So coming back to the example again, let's say I am running for a CEO position in a company. I would have to include achievements like leadership roles in my previous companies or in my university, for example. So that is what a functional CV encompasses. So for your scholarship application, it's not limited to a chronological one. If you are more comfortable using a chronological CV, it's fine. But I would highly suggest a functional CV, and because you will be able to showcase all aspects of your achievements, and it would be a lot easier for your interviewers or your recruiters to read through. Because do be aware that these recruiters read through, in fact, maybe thousands of CVs. So making it in a way neater and easier for them to read would really, I wouldn't say increase your chances, but it would really help them, be a bit more senang hati lah. Like, it will be easier for them to read through your CV compared to the others. And the last one is to categorize your achievements. Basically, categorize it into your academics, your sports, your leadership, and so forth. So that's the third step. And some general tips for writing your CV. Try to showcase your interests and passions through the activities that you highlight, that you list. So I think the point of this tip is to basically just show you. So for example, what I did during my application CV, I used to be a swimmer. So I wanted to show my interviewers that I was someone who was very dedicated to the sport. So I did include a lot of the achievements that I had during my time as a swimmer. So that is the way you should try to showcase your interests and passions. And the next thing is to prioritize what highlights your personality and passions. So basically prioritize as in put it at the top, don't put it at the bottom kind of thing. So when you're listing it down, make sure the first few things are those that are achievements and activities that really highlights your achievement, and not just like some random activity that you've done. So yeah, that is basically what the second point means. Okay, so now we are coming to the next section, or the next part, which is about CV sections. So this is basically all the information that you need to include within your CV. The first section would be your personal info. So this would include your passport photo, your full name according to your IC. IC number is usually not needed, so you just put your full name and have your contact. So your phone number and your email address. And email address, don't put your MOE account address. Try to put your personal email address. I do know some companies later on in life for your job interviews, they do actually ask for your social media accounts as well. Basically, this is for them to do a background check on you. But as a scholarship applicant, you do not need to include your social media accounts because I don't think it's that relevant. But if you want to, let's say you do have a YouTube channel and you like to include that, it's fine. But my point is, don't overdo it. Just the most important information that you need to put is your phone number and your email address. All right, so the next part is your education. So your school name and your relevant results. And for the results, try not to put anything earlier than PT3 because later I'll be covering, in the next section, if you look at the second point where it says only include relevant info with years, this is basically what it means. What it means is to include info for the past 5 years. When people do their CVs, they have this 5-year rule. So basically in this 5-year rule, you just list down whatever you've done in the past 5 years, and anything beyond that 5-year period, you do not include. So that applies for your relevant results as well. Don't include your UPSR results. It's not really relevant. Just include your PT3 and if you want, and definitely your SPM results. So coming to the last section, it's your personal info. So in this one, essentially, you just have to list down your extracurricular activities. And as I said, only include relevant info with years. Basically, what that means is to use the 5-year rule period to list down your activities. Anything beyond that, don't even care to put it in your CV, and use appropriate description when necessary. So this appropriate description, what it means is that if there is a particular activity that has a name which is quite vague, you can actually explain about what that activity particularly means. But let's say you have an activity or like a position like head prefect of XYZ school. You don't need to describe because people already know that it's the head, you're the head prefect. It's like self-explanatory. So you wouldn't need to explain. But let's say you happen to have activities which are quite vague as the title of that particular activity that you're listing down. You would want to explain a little bit. So that would really help. Yeah, but use it sparingly. Don't explain every single thing that you have on your CV. All right, now moving on to the format. Your length of your CV should be 1 to 2 pages and not less than 1 and not more than 2. So like I said earlier, this is very crucial because it's like a universally recognized format where your CV should only be 1 to 2 pages. So don't just suddenly go crazy ambitious and write a CV that is 3 or 4 pages because it is common knowledge that a CV should be 1 to 2 pages long in the working world. So you like to keep to this most important format that they have. And the next thing is to make sure to use contrasting and simple colors. So colors like black, blue should be fine. Red, I would say, is a bit too much, but people online, if you read articles, they say that red is fine as well, as long as it's not too bright and not too flashy. But I would highly suggest keeping it to black and blue. And for your fonts, make sure you use a black or dark color font, because if you guys are still applying for scholarships online, you very likely might be sending in a PDF version of your CV. So you know how like lighter colors don't really stand out on the screen. So you wouldn't want to make your interviewer or your recruiter have to squint their eyes just to read what you're writing on your CV. So try to use a dark colored font, and if best, use black. So the next thing is to make sure your presentation is neat. It's not really something that you really need to control, because with technology now, you can use Canva, you can use even Word, Microsoft Word to create a template, to use a template for your CVs. So it doesn't really, it's not, you just have to make sure that it looks presentable, or otherwise you can just follow the template bulat-bulat. It doesn't matter. Okay, so the next thing is to utilize keywords. There are a few keywords that I've selected here, which is like improved, managed, coached, achieved, led, developed, and streamlined. If you search online, you can find way more keywords that can use within your CV. But basically, these keywords are like power words that people use in their CVs to really amplify what they've done. So for example, you were the captain of the debate team in your school. The way you can put that in your CV is you can say that I coached and I led the school debate team to win blah 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 blah. So you could do that, and yeah, it's basically not really proven, but it's known to increase someone's perception towards your particular CV. So be sure to use these keywords, and this is just a handful selection that I chose for this particular slide. If you go online, you can find hundreds of powerful keywords that you can include in your CV. So be sure to check that out as well. Okay, so on this slide, I have two very different looking CVs. On the left, it's if I'm not mistaken, it's a Canva tablet. A very, not really colorful, but it's base colors, but it looks more attractive than the one on the right. The right side CV is basically the traditional CV. This is how someone would write it if they were applying for a job at a MNC, for example. Because I think in MNCs, some MNCs do have a policy where there's a certain format you have to follow when writing your CV. So it would be helpful if you knew how to do both. Basically, the one on the left, you can just copy it from sites like Canva. Like, yeah, So it doesn't really matter as of now at this stage, but in the future, you would really want to differentiate whether you want to use a more modern looking CV or a more traditional one. It really depends on who you're going to be reviewed by. It's up to them to decide, basically. Yeah, so this is, I think, the last slide. So some key takeaways: try to differentiate quality from quantity. You don't want to be having a full 2 pages cluttered with your activities and your achievements that you've done through high school, because if it already looks cluttered and messy in the first place, there's a very high chance that your recruiters or your interviewers would just not look at your CV and move on to the next one. It happens because if you're, for example, applying for Yayasan UEM scholarship, last year there were more than 5,000 applicants. So imagine your recruiters having to read through every single CV. They are most probably going to skip those that are messy and not very attractive to them. So make sure you do differentiate quality from quantity. The next thing is to also highlight your positive experiences, like skills and values that you've gained. This could be included in short descriptions after certain achievements or activities that you've described. And make sure you use the powerful keywords that I've mentioned earlier to highlight these skills and values that you've learned through those activities. And the next one is to make use of elaboration when appropriate. Like I mentioned earlier, if something is really self-explanatory, you don't need to waste your CV space trying to explain again what it is. But if there is a very vague like activity that you have, try to explain a bit more. So the last thing is interviewers have to screen through hundreds of CVs, in fact, sometimes even thousands. So make sure they are concise, they are accurate, and they perfectly describe who you are as a person. Yep, so that's all. So for those who will be applying for scholarships that need CVs, all the best. And yeah, I'll be moving on to the next section about interview prep. Okay, so now we'll be moving on to the interviews. So as if you see on this first slide, there's a short writing at the bottom there. Interviews are your interviewer's first glance in your personality. This is something you need to keep in mind throughout this whole presentation and also throughout your interviews. If let's say some of you do get your interviews, this is something you would really want to keep in mind, because sometimes during an interview, it can be quite tempting to go overboard and to try to paint yourself in such a perfect picture to a point that it's not you anymore. So make sure you keep this particular statement in mind for the rest of your application period, and hopefully after that, when you go on to job interviews, it would be the same thing as well. So before we start with the more serious stuff, this is just some general tips on how and what you can do to prepare. The first point is read up on systemic and idiosyncratic issues. I'm sorry, it's big words here, but basically what systemic and idiosyncratic issues mean is the type of issues that happen within your country and the world. So systemic is something like global issues, current affairs in certain countries, or even within your own country. So that is it's more like the general news that happens around the world. So I know it may sound quite daunting at first, like there's so many things that are happening, how do I know what to read? My advice is you can download the BBC and CNN app on your phones, or even use their websites. Just read whatever is trending. That's honestly what I did last year, and to my surprise, one of the trending stories did actually come out for my interview. So that would be my advice: read BBC, CNN, and whatever is trending, just read it. Even if you don't understand, just try your best to know what it's about. You don't really have to read the details of it. Just as long as you know about that particular event happening, that should be good enough for you. And then idiosyncratic issues are basically issues which affect the company. The company, when I say company, it means that the scholarship body that you're applying to. So for example, if I'm applying to Shell, I would read out news about Shell. If I'm applying to Sime Darby, I'll be reading out news about Sime Darby. So that is what I mean by idiosyncratic issues, because you would never know what your interviewers ask you. It could be something about an issue that affected that particular scholarship body before, and you would want to see how you as a person, you would tackle that particular issue. So uh, it would be really beneficial if you knew what was happening to that company and not go in to the interview not knowing anything about the company and what's happened to the company for the past few years. If your scholarship body has a public listed branch, so for example, UEM does have a public listed, and what I mean by public listed is listed on the stock market, the stock exchange. It's even easier to find your information there because it will be covered in the news, like your newspaper. So you know every single thing that's happening within that company. And if you want to go to even further extents, you can actually search up the annual reports of those scholarship bodies that you're applying to. I did that for those scholarships that I applied to, and I found it extremely beneficial because you can just include what you think you can potentially contribute to the company, and I guarantee you it will impress your interviewers. But obviously, make sure you know what you're talking about. Don't just say it in passing to impress them, but rather know what that issue is about and your thoughts on it, because it really shows that in a way you're quite committed to, trying to wanting to be their scholar and being a committed worker, potential worker for that company in the future. The second thing is do your research. There's nothing much like research. Basically just means reading about your current affairs, the company, what you really want to do. Some of us may not even get the courses that we wanted to apply for. But basically you just want to research about your course, why you want to do that course, what is it that resonates within that course for you. So all this is the time for you to prepare for all this anyway. The next thing is to plan out your answers for common interview questions. You can search out online, like what are common interview questions. Like people can ask you, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Like you would not expect this because it's so common, but do not be surprised that actually that will be the first question you receive in your interview. So you can search online, like what are the common interview questions that companies would ask their job interviews. Because really, if you think about it, your scholarship interview is basically an interview for your job with that same company in the future. So you would just have to treat it like a job interview and practice common questions that will be asked in the job interview. The next one is to just practice, draft, and practice again and draft. This is for your answers in your interview questions. And lastly, just be yourself. Be who you really are. Don't try to put on a facade. Don't try to put on like a mask to, trying to make yourself look so perfect, because interviewers can really tell if you're faking something. So just be yourself. Like if you're a joking person, be joking, but not overdo it. Of course, if you're like, a shy person, try not to be so shy, but interviewers will know that you're a bit on the soft side. It doesn't matter as long as you just be yourself. Okay, so this STAR technique is basically, shall I say, a format to how you can answer certain questions. Not every question you can answer using the STAR technique, but it's more towards like personal questions. Like, let's say your interviewer asks you about an event which changed your life and how it shaped you as a person. You can follow this STAR technique. So basically what STAR stands for is situation, task, action, and result. So in the situation, you just have to identify and concisely describe the situation you were in. And then for the task action, what was your goal and what did you do in this situation that you were put in? And lastly, the result, what did you accomplish? And most importantly, what did you learn? I found this STAR technique to be only quite useful in, when your interviewers ask you personal questions, and like personal questions about your high school activities and achievements. But let's say your interview goes in the direction of something more world related, something more company related, where it's, very much focused on your future job rather than what you've done before. This technique won't really apply, but what you can try to include is the task action. This is most probably the most crucial part of the STAR technique, which is what is your goal and what you did. Yep, so this is basically the STAR technique. Moving on, we have the group interviews. So hopefully in this section, I would be able to guide you to stand out without even trying. I know this sounds a bit controversial. Like I'm not trying to make all of you here, whoever who's watching this, fight with each other, like have beef with each other just because of an interview. But what I'm saying is everyone just want to have a chance at getting the scholarship. So there is just so much you can do to try to stand out, and you have to try to do whatever that you read online, or like I explained to you today, to try to stand out in your interview. So there's no harm to trying out new things. Everything is a learning process. Even your interviews are a learning process. But these are just some tips that I found helpful for myself, and I hope it will help you as well to stand out in your interviews. So yeah, this is the first thing that you really need to remember in your group interviews. Remember just now how I said, like, your interviews are actually probably a mirrored version of your job interviews in the future. So technically, in a group interview, what interviewers are looking for is someone who is competent, and someone who is a leader, and someone who is a good team worker. Sorry, that's three things. So obviously, you would try to be the leader. You would most probably want to be the leader because that is, I wouldn't say get the person that gets the most spotlight, but I would say the person that gets noticed the most. So basically how you can do this is you can follow these 4 P's. There's this leadership. It's about leadership presence. This is actually from a course online that I happened to come across when I was preparing these slides. So the way that course described to being an effective leader in a new environment, especially because in your group interview, you'll be going with people you don't know. So these 4 P's will really help you in a new environment. So the first thing is purpose. So what is your purpose? How can you show that your purpose is more than just fighting for a scholarship? So like I said earlier, like reading up on these current affairs and even company news is very important. And this is already a first step to show that, to show your interviewer that, if you are going to give me this scholarship, I can promise you that I'm going to do my best for this company. Of course, it's quite debatable. Many people have their different ways of showcasing their dedication and commitment, their potential commitment. But for me, I think it's a lot better if you could, in a way, try to insinuate that you could be a very good decision maker and a very good worker for that particular company. And that is the purpose that you should have. Instead of just, I'm just wanting the scholarship so that I can study for free, over being someone that you can really contribute to the company. So that should be a purpose. Different people have different purposes. The example that I just used was what I used personally during my interview, and it worked for me. So I would highly suggest you to use or search for your own purpose. The second thing is perspective. So during your interview, you're going to be having to talk with other people. So perspective basically just seeing things others don't. So, and a more complex way to put this is to play devil's advocate. This is exactly what I did during my interviews as well. And I don't know whether I did well being the devil's advocate, but one thing I can tell you is that I came out with new ideas that others didn't. So this is something very important, because as a leader, you must be able to see, a particular issue from multiple angles and not just one angle that the majority sees. So that is one way to make yourself stand out. And how you can this like, all-rounding perspective is to just read, basically. There's not much you can do to prepare for this, but basically if you're a debater, that's fantastic because you would be doing this like every day. But if you're someone who's not from a debate background, just try to read news. Let's say you did find news about, let's say, a cyberware attack in the US. You would like to read from a British newscaster, for example, BBC, and their thoughts on it, and then you would read from CNN, which is based in the US, and then from these two different media stations, you'll be able to see different perspectives on that particular issue. So that is what I mean by seeing from different angles. So that is perspective. The next one is poise. So I would say 90% of the time, an interview won't go the way you want it to go. So you would have to really keep your emotions in check. And especially now that you're on camera, basically your interviewer can see you most of the time. So try not to make a face when something goes wrong. Just try to keep calm, keep a straight face. And, if someone says something that is, a bit off, don't laugh. Definitely don't laugh. But, just try to nod your head sometimes, like you're in agreement. And, all these small little things will definitely play a small part in your interviewer selection of you as well. So the bottom line is just to basically keep your emotions in check. Don't suddenly like frown, because that will be something very obvious to your interviewers. And the last thing is projection. This is more towards your presentation. So you have to be precise, convincing, and confident. So when you're sitting down, sit straight up, don't slouch, and don't cover your face below the camera like that. Just try to be visible throughout the whole camera. And when you're speaking, be clear, be concise, be convincing, and yeah, your tone of voice must be confident. And that's about it for the 4 Ps that you can try to utilize during your group interviews. The next thing is building confidence. I know some of us here are not natural speakers. Like myself, I'm also not a natural speaker. Like the only reason why I'm speaking to that many of you here today is after years of practice on, building up my own confidence and speaking in front of a huge crowds to learn how to build my confidence. But I do know that all of us here are still under COVID restrictions. You may not have had the chance to learn public speaking or, go just deliver a random speech in front of people. But basically, one trick that I've found really, really beneficial is to practice in front of a mirror. So learn and practice, right? Practice in front of a mirror, look at yourself, try to look at your facial expressions and your body actions that when you're speaking. So try to notice things like your eyebrow. Like, are you touching your eyebrow while you're speaking? Are you touching your nose? Are you touching your chin? Are you, looking somewhere else? All this you can see through the mirror. And all those actions that I just mentioned earlier, they're actually subtle actions that show that you're nervous or you're not confident. So when you're practicing in front of the mirror, you can really see that, these are the certain body movements that you're doing, or your posture, for example, shows how nervous you are or how unconfident you are. So make sure to try to practice in front of the mirror for your interview. The next thing is to refrain from negative self-talk. During an interview, it's very likely you'll meet some fantastic people, like people who probably won an Olympic medal. Okay, I mean, that didn't happen in my interviews, but I'm just saying that could happen, but you never know. So you may feel inferior in a sense, and you may suddenly just realize, like, why am I even applying for this scholarship? I'm not as good as that particular person. Well, please don't do that to yourself, because you're only going to feel really, really depressed after that. So just acknowledge that you've made it to this point of the selections. Interviews are usually the last 2 stages. Group interview is the second last, and your individual interview is the last section, the last stage of your selections. So, you've really come so far. Don't tell yourself that you're not good enough, because you are definitely good enough to even reach that stage. So yeah, refrain from negative self-talk. And the last one is adopt a growth mindset. Don't just go into an interview trying to snatch, the scholarship to yourself. In fact, try to treat it as a learning experience. When you're listening to someone else, they may say something new that you have not known before. So that would be a really good chance for you to learn about something new. And sometimes if your interviewer is quite relaxed and quite sociable, they would actually give you some feedback about your performance, like at the end. So yeah, be sure to just learn from whatever everyone has to say. Excuse me. So now coming to the last minute preparations, the last stretch before the night before any interview. Okay, so preparing yourself and netiquette. Netiquette is basically online etiquette, like net etiquette. Yeah. So prepare your clothes for the real thing the night before, and make sure you dress up fully. Don't like how like during COVID everyone had their jackets on, their suits on, but then everything from the waist down it was shorts and like probably still in your pajamas pants. Try not to do that. Try to dress up fully. If you're wearing a suit, for guys, if you're wearing a suit, make sure you're dressed up to your slacks. And if you want to go to extreme, you can go extreme. You just wear socks as well. I did that. Don't laugh at me, but I actually did that. I wore socks, like black socks, so that I felt like I was really in a real physical interview. For girls, if you're wearing a suit as well, make sure you dress up appropriately below your waist as well. It's just for you to feel like you're in the real thing. So the next thing is to also make sure you set up your appropriate location. For Wi-Fi, nothing much you can do because your interviewers will also, in a way, they will also know that down and settle before the interview is the location of your interview, where you want to do the interview. So this location must have good lighting and great sound quality. So I think this is just like the bare minimum you can do to prepare for a better interview experience. So make sure you do get these preparations done. And the last thing is just basically to calm yourself down. The night before the interview, do what relaxes you. If you like to play music, go ahead and jam. But don't sleep too late, of course. Just do something that relaxes you. And yeah, that is basically the last thing that you want to do before your interview. The next morning when you have your interview, just kill it. Okay, so coming to I think this is the last section. What if I mess up and how do you think under pressure? So the common misconception is that interviewers are scary. And I think as students, it's even greater. This fear is even greater because you'll be interviewed by quite prominent people in that particular company. So you may be interviewed by a C-level person, you may be interviewed by a director, you could basically be interviewed by anyone. So, and these people are working. So if you're a student and you're being interviewed by someone who's really working, it can be intimidating sometimes. But just realize that interviewers are not that scary at all. Even though they look like old, they look scary, they look like they're serious, and you can't even crack a joke. And let's say you did a joke and then they didn't laugh. They're not that scary. They're just, they're just people who are basically quite serious in the jobs that they do. So I wouldn't worry too much if, like, let's say they just have a nonchalant facial expression and they don't seem to be reacting to whatever you say. Don't worry, because most probably they do that to everyone as well. And you're just one of the interviewees that felt like that. So don't worry too much. They are actually totally very understanding people. They understand that you're a student and you're under a high pressure environment. So I wouldn't worry too much about the interviewers. So how do you think under pressure? Basically, try to breathe deeply and focus on your heartbeat. That's your own body. You should be able to calm yourself down through these few techniques, like breathing deeply and focusing, trying to listen to your heartbeat through your ears. Yeah, if that makes sense. On the other hand, you can also try to give yourself some positive internal talk, like saying that, you can do this. You've come so far, it doesn't make sense to give up now, things like that. So try to positively assure yourself. And the last thing is, if the interviewers happen to give you a really tough question or something that you've never heard before, or like don't even understand, don't be scared to ask for some time. Or if you would like them to re-clarify what the question is, you can actually ask them again on what the question actually meant. They would understand because you are students and they are working people. So sometimes they may accidentally use their working, like the accustomed way of speaking to their clients or to their colleagues, and they may use that particular style of speaking on you. So it may be a bit too complex, and sometimes it may be the words they use may be really big and you may not understand certain words. So you just don't feel shy to re-clarify and ask them what the question actually means, because they will actually simplify it for you. And just rest assured, it will not make you look stupid. In fact, it will amp up your, should I say amp you up a little bit, because it shows that you're not shy to ask if you don't understand something. So yeah, that is basically the last point on thinking under pressure. And all the best to all of you. And I hope you guys do actually make it to the final stages of your scholarship selections, which is the interviews. Just remember, be yourself, be genuine. Don't lie to your interviewers, please. I just to wrap this up, I had a really funny story. Like, I had a mutual friend who went to Cambridge, and during his life, he had two interviews for some reason. He had an online interview before for play the piano. And when he went to the UK for the second interview, there was a piano in the room, and the interviewers asked him to play the piano, and he couldn't play the piano because he lied. So imagine not being able to go to Cambridge because you couldn't play the piano. He didn't get get to go to Cambridge because he lied during the interview. So you do not want to be in that position, especially when you're talking about your achievements and things like that. So Karim next.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Arina Karim, and today I'll be briefing to you about the essay prep. Okay, so moving on. All right, so for today, we'll be discussing, there will be three parts to this session. So what you will have to do before, during, and after you write your essay. Okay. So, all right. Here are a few points that you may want to keep in mind as before you write your essay. So, first of all, is that you should consider the topic given. So, what this means is that once you get the question, make sure you break it down into pieces and try to evaluate what exactly you want. Okay. So, because the essay part, it allows you to share a personal part of yourself. So explain about the values that you have that they are looking for, okay? And explain how your values resonate with the company's aims and objectives. Because not all scholarships require essays, and if they do require it, it's always question oriented. And the theme is not really as open-ended as a university application essay. However, this doesn't stop you from being creative. All right. So moving on to the next point, which is to structure it to avoid repetition. Okay. I'm sorry for the long pause. There were some technical issues. Okay. So moving on to the next part is to structure it to avoid repetition. Okay. As for this part, okay, maybe like you can use a Google document website, or maybe you can use like Microsoft Word to jot all of your ideas. And then if you wish to use paper and pencil, by all means do it. Do whatever that suits and is feasible to you. Okay, so as we go on to the next part, which is to write down all of your ideas. This part is actually really helpful and useful as you actually write your essay. So what you can do is like, what I did during my essay writing part was like, I took a piece of paper and then I do a stickman version of myself, and then I divided the paper into two parts. Like there's a part where like all the things that I've done throughout my high school life, and then the other part is like my strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so once you jot on all of these, because the essay writing is about you yourself, right? So as you have this brainstorm sheet, it can actually like make your essay writing become a lot more smoother. So then we have the brainstorm your ideas. Okay, like I've mentioned before, it's going to be of a lot of advantage as you write on later. Okay, and lastly is to use your experience to portray yourself. So for this part, in my opinion, this is the humanizing part of the scholarship application, because it's almost impossible to know a person through a set of A's on a certificate. So yeah, try giving examples and situations that you've actually done in your life, and try to adopt the practice of show and not tell. So instead of explicitly telling, writing in your essay that I am a helpful person, maybe you can actually give a situation. For example, like you had helped an old lady to cross the street. So from there, you're actually trying to show it to your recruiters that you are actually a helpful person. Okay, moving on to the next part of today's session is going to be the during writing your essay. Okay, so try use examples wisely and avoid sensitive topics. Example of sensitive topics are like politics and religions. Try to avoid writing about or including these topics in your essay at all costs. Okay, it will give you a negative image in a way. Okay, if you did not write it properly. Okay, try to avoid this kind of risk. Okay, next is start writing your essay in a separate document from your draft. Okay, more often than not, as you apply for the scholarship at the scholarship portal, okay, so more often than not in the scholarship application portal, they will give you like a field where you are expected to write your essay there. So, and then sometimes they have like a time limit for you to like open, like left it. So to avoid these hiccups, maybe you can try to like write it on word processing softwares that I've mentioned before, such as Google Documents and also Microsoft Word. So once you've done actually done with your essay, you can just copy and paste it when you're done to the field on the scholarship portal. Okay, and then while drafting, make sure you try to structure it as well. So this one kind of links to the one that you did before you had the essay. So as you have your brainstorm sheet, it will make your essay writing a lot smoother, and you will actually know what to write and when to write. Okay, so don't try to edit while drafting your essay. Okay, as for this part, right? At one point you might feel like the essay writing is a never-ending process, because not everyone has an excellent. Not everyone is a gifted writer. So maybe they find essay writing is a hard. That's what I felt during the scholarship application last year. So just write whatever comes to mind, and then you try to edit it later. Okay, just write whatever, because like you will have an ample time. You will have ample time to actually write and prepare your essay. Okay, and then lastly is to show your interest in your intended course with your experience. So for example, you wanted to pursue engineering later, right? In your essay, maybe you can include the R&D competitions that you've joined, or maybe some science and maths competition you join, regardless, even if it's like at school level, okay, it doesn't have to be big or small as long as it seems personal to you, because the essay writing is something that is supposed to be personal. Okay, but given the COVID situation for the past 2 years, maybe we did not have like much experience to actually go out there to join a lot of competitions. So it doesn't matter how big or small that you've done. It can be just as simple as you reading a weekly article, because you wanted to show to your recruiters that you are actually really interested in the course, and also that you are doing whatever it takes to actually know what you will have to do later. What you will have to do later. Okay. Right. So next, congratulations, you've done your essay, at least for the first draft, maybe. Okay. Now we're going to go to the part where what you will have to do after you write your essay. So once you're done with writing your essay, okay, you should reward yourself by taking a break before rereading your essay. Okay. So sometimes you may miss out a thing or two when you write. So once you all freshen up after you took like a cup of tea, maybe you can even reward yourself by watching a movie before you recheck your essay. Maybe you will notice there are some spelling errors. So in your essay, try to avoid any spelling errors and also grammatical errors, because we wanted to show our best to our recruiters that we are capable of writing. Okay, and then next you may try to get someone else to read your essay before you submit it. Okay, maybe you can ask like your family member, one of your family members to read it out for you, and just to like verify that whatever you're writing, it's really you. You wanted the essay to actually show who you really are. And maybe this could be like a pro tip is try not to have too many people to write your essay, because like if there are too many people reading your essay, and you will get like so many feedbacks, and you will have the tendency to edit so many times that at a point that the essay doesn't sound like you anymore. So that is the last thing that you would want to have for your essay, because like I've mentioned, your essay is something that is personal to you. All right. And lastly is to make sure your point gets across. So I could not emphasize this enough, because for this part of the social application, like I've mentioned before, it's the humanizing part of the process. So we wanted them to know who you really are, and not what you think that they should perceive you as. Okay. So just to recap, so this would be like the flow of the essay prep. So firstly, you write your essay, just write whatever that comes into mind first, and then you will try to correct any errors, adjusting the structure, basically the editing part, once you've done your draft. Okay. Once you're satisfied with your essay, only then you can submit your essay. And that's all for the essay part. If you have any questions, do keep it to yourself first, and we will see you again on the Q&A session. All right. So.
Okay, guys. So we'll just start with the first round of Q&A. I had a few questions posted to me regarding CV and the difference between a CV and resume. I do apologize because earlier I did actually use the both terms quite synonymously. Because at this stage, I think you wouldn't be really writing a CV, but rather more of a resume. So if you can see the screen here, this is actually my resume. Should I say my resume about uh for applying to one of the things that I'm doing now. So if you look at this closely, you would see. Okay, I think it's easier if I. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see it because it's quite small. Okay, let me just. Uh, Reshare the screen again. Okay, so you should be able to see it now. So first of all, I started with my education. Uh, so I'm in college ISN UEM now. I'm doing A levels. I'm taking the state subjects here: accounting, economics, history, mathematics, further mathematics. So for you, how this you can apply this the same thing to you is you basically would write your school name here, and then year that you were in is easier. But if you did take IGCSE, like for a few subjects, you can include that as well. I did not include my subject combination in SPM because I felt that it wasn't really useful after I've started doing A levels. But as of now, you guys haven't started A levels, so it would make sense to include some of your, actually all your subjects that you took during A levels and during SPM. And if you want to, you can also include your results, like I mentioned earlier. So moving on, like, I remember, if you remember what I said earlier about using a functional CV, this is basically a functional CV where I used a leadership experience. So I am currently the student council president at KY, and I was founder of a few things: Pelajarela, the leadership power room, and blah blah blah, so forth. And then I also included my achievements or my activities in high school. So like I was a head prefect in my school, chairman of and captain of various things. And then after that, I went into job specific experience because the position that I was applying to was quite, it was something that required me to basically, I actually, to be honest, I don't remember what this resume was for, but basically I was trying to apply for something, and this was the type of experiences I had. So for example, I am still a journalism executive at Financial Literacy for Youth, Malaysia Fly, and then I'm also a research committee at the Malaysian Youth Finance Seminar, things like that. So basically, and the last thing I included was volunteerism because I felt that it expresses who I am as a person. I love teaching. I love helping people. So I volunteer as a teacher to teach underprivileged students. So if you see from this presentation that I have, I used more specific things. So I do have other achievements. For example, like during my time in high school, I was a national swimmer. I represented the country a few times in swimming, and but I didn't include it here because I felt that it wasn't necessary for the position that I was applying for. So the fact that you guys are applying for scholarships, maybe you would need to include some of your highest achievements that you have during your time in high school. So let's say if you're a sports person, what's the highest level of achievement that you've had? If you are in debate, what is your highest level of achievement in debate? Could be nationals or states, I don't know. If you did like science of maths competition, you could have a section about STEM, and this is what you're involved in STEM. So basically, this is how your resume should look like. Mine isn't perfect because I have not updated much of it after coming to KY. But this is basically how it should look like. So that is the question between CV and resume. So how it differs, a CV is usually only used for people who are applying for academic purposes. So for like applying for positions in academia, so for example, you want to be a professor in a university, or you want to be a postdoctorate fellow in a particular university, you would use a CV, because what a CV actually is, it actually encompasses all your academic credentials. So for example, you went to school at this, you went to high school at I don't know, TKC, for example. I don't know why the example popped into my mind, but TKC, MCKK, whatever. And then for college, this is where I went to. I went to KYUEM. University, I went to maybe London School of Economics. And then I did my master's in MIT. And then for the last thing, you want to be doing your postdoctorate in maybe Harvard, for example. So you would be listing down all your credentials, and let's say if you did have any publications, you did have any theses that you wrote, researches that you have done throughout your time studying, you would want to include that. But if you are going by the textbook answer to what a CV is, that is literally what a CV is. It's only for people applying in the realms of academia. Now, for a resume, like I said earlier, it is used for a more specific cause. So for example, I'm applying to be a CEO of a company. I would include all my leadership experience, why I'm a good leader, and things like that. So as for now, your scholarship bodies will probably use it interchangeably too. They may ask you for a CV or resume. But at this point, you don't really have much experience to write both, unless you are already studying a PhD but still applying to study A levels. Then I don't know, maybe you're a different breed. But otherwise, you would be writing somewhat between a crossover of a CV and resume. Because if you look at my example here, my education, I included my education, but in a resume, you would usually not. You would include more of your experiences as a person in that particular role that you're applying for. So if to answer the question, like what should you use, a CV or resume, I would suggest you combine both, because at this point you're still students. You don't really have much to say about experiences to become a scholar. Neither do you have enough to write about your academic credentials, unless, like I said, you've already suddenly studied a PhD course, or like you've already written your thesis, you have had publications like research papers published. If you have, but like for the vast majority of people that you probably don't have enough to sustain a CV as well as a resume on itself. So what I would suggest is you combine a CV and resume together. So like I think YK is Yayasan Khazanah is one good example, because out of all the scholarship bodies that I applied to, like they were probably the only ones that required a CV or / resume. So even they use it interchangeably. So you should be fine using a crossover between a CV and resume, where you list down your academic credentials up to SPM, and then you also include the activities that you had. So I hope that clears up the question on on CVs or resume. So basically, that's about it. And I think I do have another question. I'm sorry, let me just check if I have another question. Okay, so the second question I have is, I think it was something about is it should we use a modern one or the traditional version of the CVs? Honestly, at this stage, it doesn't matter juga, because you can use a modern one. Like this, mine on the screen here, it's a modern CV, or you could use a traditional one. It doesn't really matter. But why I mentioned, or why did I put those two examples earlier on screen, is because you really have to know who is looking through your CV. So for example, like if you have, let's say you're applying for a job in the future, and then your interviewer is this old guy, and then you might expect him not to really be appreciative of a modern way of presenting the CV, so you wouldn't include a modern one. You would try to put a traditional CV forward. But like I said, it doesn't really matter as long as it's whatever that you're comfortable with, and if you like it, just use it. It doesn't really matter. But let's say if you're more of like the person that wants to go textbook way, like it must look like a professional one, like all words and no like fancy fonts, no picture, no uh like what you see, like all the colors that you see, no icons, no different kind of things. It's just words. Then you go ahead by all means, because it doesn't really matter at this stage. If you're applying for scholarships, it's just you just want to see what you've done. It's not really, they won't penalize you for using a traditional CV or a modern CV. But use for your job CVs in the future, I would highly recommend you try to actually know who is going to be reading your CV, and then try to make a judgment from there. If let's say it's someone young who's going to read your CV, most probably they'll appreciate a modern CV. But if it's some 70-year-old man who's going to be reading your CV, most probably it'll be easier if you put it just words, because he'll be reading it. Older people have probably a tougher time reading smaller words. So try not to have a modern CV, because you know how modern, the minimalist kind of vibe to it, it may affect the way they read it as well. So it really depends on whoever's going to be reading your CV. But otherwise, I wouldn't worry about it. It's not something to worry about. They won't penalize you for using either format. So yeah, I hope that answered the second question as well.
Okay, so someone asked, does this means that there will be given a topic to write for the essay? Okay, sort of like a topic, but like usually it's like questions oriented. Yeah, it's like maybe they would want to ask you like what you think, what it's not really open ended. That's all I can say lah. It's once they give you like a very general kind of topic, and you can develop it from there. So at times that you can be creative to make your essay sound as stunning as you can, right? I hope that answers your question. Okay. On to the next one. All right. So, is there a limit for the essay length? Yes. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to write until the maximum. Okay, for example, like they will give you like the field and it will say like in 650 words, for example. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to write exactly 650. No, it's just a maximum number. So if you like wrote like 630 and your essay seems fine, you have the points that you need, you already show yourself in there nicely, your points already across already, then it's good to go. Yeah. And so just to reconfirm that, yes, you will have a word limit for your essays. Right. On to the next one. Okay. I think this will be like the last question until we proceed with the assessment. Okay. So the last question is, do we need to use very advanced word to write I did not cover this during the explanations now. So you don't necessarily have to use bombastic words, as long as what you try to convey is already shown in your essay, or at least what you think has been shown in your essay, that's already sufficient. Okay, because you have to keep in mind that the essay for a scholarship application is not an English literature essay, or it's not a Bahasa Melayu essay that you did in SPM. You don't have to include any idioms or peribahasas or whatsoever. No need. Just be straight to the point, and then yeah, basically that's it. Simple language is fine. It won't reduce your chances at any cost. No worries. All right. All right, so moving on to the assessments part. All right. Okay. So, okay. All right. So here's a general info about the assessment. Okay. So most scholarships have an assessment stage at one point. This is because companies and recruiters, they wanted to select their prospective scholars in a pool of bright minds. So this is the way to go. And typically the assessments start right after you've submitted your application, and only a certain period of time is allocated. So from this statement, it means that you'll be putting under a time pressure as you do your assessment. So for this part of the scholarship application, make sure you are quick on your feet and try to stay calm as possible. All right. And different scholarship bodies test on different areas and also use different websites. So for example, Yayasan Khazanah, YK, they use Cubics Logic. And for PNB and YSD, SHL, PNB and YSD, they use SHL Talent Center. And as for Shell, they use Highview. So these are like websites. So don't worry, if you qualify for this stage of the scholarship application, they will email you and give you whatever links or maybe documents that you need for this assessment. Okay. So, and for the last part is do your best to get a good and stable internet connection. Okay, as for this one, it's almost out of our control to actually get a good and stable internet connection, right? So try to go to somewhere that you think that has a really strong connection. Okay, all right. So moving, so you have the numerical reasoning class where they will try. Sorry. Okay. Firstly, you will have the numerical reasoning test where you are evaluated on your basic mathematics that usually involves graphs, addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication are the ones that you actually have to really master. Don't worry, there will be no differentiation or integration for this part. Okay, it's just basic mathematics. Okay, and keep a calculator on standby if it's allowed. So be sure to check, to read the rules and regulations for the assessment. Okay, and please have a sense of integrity as you proceed with the assessment. Okay, and manage your time properly and do not spend too much time for one question. So if you can skip the question and look back at it later, by all means, please do so, because wasting time is the last thing that you would want to do for this assessment. Okay, because time is precious. All right, and then we have the verbal reasoning test, where usually and revolve around social sciences and also economics. Okay. Make sure to read the questions carefully because the options can be quite confusing. So good luck with that. And on true, false, or cannot tell questions. In my is the quite tough. So whatever it is, be sure to read the question and the answers as well carefully. Okay, so you make a wise choice. All right, and then we have the diagrammatic reasoning test, where you are expected to identify patterns, and it's easy to get the hang of it with some practices. So for the diagrammatic reasoning test, sometimes they give you like shapes or patterns. So you have to remember the sequences. So I remember doing a game assessment for one of the scholarship that I applied to last year. So they wanted me to like remember a number sequence. And then at one point for the next level for that game assessment, they make it harder by you remember the sequence and you are expected to give the answer in reverse sequence. So if it's A, B, C, D, you have to answer it as D, C, B, A. So it's quite challenging, but you have to be smart here. If it's allowed, do bring a pencil and paper so that it can help you with these assessments. Okay, all right, and I'll pass it to Zachary.
All right. Okay, so I'll be covering the personality test and situational judgment test. So I'll cover the personality test first. The main objective of these questions is to basically just gauge your personality. There is no right or wrong answer. It's usually like those kind of gray area questions where you have to make a choice about something. So you just have to really pick the answers that best, what you think is true first for the first time. When you first see the question, what you think is right, that is usually the right answer for you. So don't try to think like, what will the person that was reviewing my test score think if I select this answer? No, don't do that, because if you do that, then basically you're not being yourself anymore. So it will skew your result to something else that you're not. So just when you see a question if they ask you to pick anything, the first thing that pops into your mind, that is the thing you select. I think when you are doing at this stage later on in your selections, they will also remind you, your scholarship body will also like remind you to pick whatever that's first that comes to your mind and just move on, because there is no right or wrong, and basically it's just for them to assess who you really are. And let's say you do kind of like accidentally pick something that you've thought about for a long time, it will affect your interview later, because when interviewers interview you, in a way, they can assess your personality through that. And if they find that there's a discrepancy between your personality test and who you really are as a person, it can probably affect your chances of being selected. So whatever you do, just first thing that pops into your mind, that's what you select. There's no right or wrong. So don't be afraid that like, what if I was supposed to select, I thought of selecting A, but then, I think B or C might have been a better answer. Well, if you thought A first, select A. They won't penalize you on that. It's just basically for them to see who you really are as a person. So coming to the second type of assessment, which is also situational judgment. Just before I move on, just be aware that not all scholarship bodies have every single one. This is just every type of assessment that we've been asked, or for those who will be applying for like 20 assessments that you may encounter. Like for me, for scholarships, I probably don't even remember doing like the numerical ones and like problem solving, but I don't remember any of this. So it really depends on who you're applying to and like what they give you. But also do be aware that they may change the types of assessments throughout the years. So we can't really guarantee you, for example, like you're applying for YUEM, you'll get last year we got personality test and situational judgment. This year you'll get the same thing. We can't guarantee that. because your one thing to also keep in mind is that your sponsors or your potential sponsors they actually have like a 5-year plan. So basically what that means is that you will be technically fulfilling their job spaces 5 years from now after you finish studying. So the types of tests that they give you will be dependent on that particular job scope that they want you to do. So yeah, that is just something to keep in mind. So if let's say you have seniors telling you that, oh, let's say I applied for yes, don't not to say don't listen, but like don't really take it with a pinch of salt because it may change. So yeah, now continuing the situational judgment, it's basically a series of questions to understand how you would react to different scenarios if they were to happen in your workplace. Now I can workplace, sorry. Now I can already like foresee questions like, people may be asking like, why should I be smart or should I like be myself? Well, the thing is, in this situational judgment, you have to think as if you are a worker or like you are an employee of that company. So anything you do, you would have to be acting in the best interest of the company. Because there's many reasons why I say this, to why you have to act in best interest of the company. Because you have to understand that when you're working in the future, there's company policy that you have to that you have to follow. And if you fail to follow that company policy, you may you risk yourself to getting fired or even like being brought to court. Like they can actually sue you for not following company policy, and it's quite common, like more common than you think it is. So I do know that this is just a test, but you would really want to try to do this with the mindset of what would I do if I were to be working for this particular company. And it is not like they don't expect you to know every single company policy. Like you're not even working for them, they won't expect you to know, but it's more of like a moral judgment. Like the example you see at the bottom, like what would you do if your own supervisor is taking bribes? Like, so would you tell the higher ups that bribery is happening within the company because it could affect the integrity of the company? Or will you just walk up to your supervisor and like tell him like, it's not right to do so? Or would you not do anything? So I think in this circumstance, when you get questions like this, it's always best to think, if you don't do anything, would there be repercussions to you and the company? So that would be the best way to think about it, because I think every scenario that they give you, there will always be a repercussion to you and to the company that you're working for. So 2 things to keep in mind is you have to analyze and make a judgment out of the options they give you. You have to try to analyze to see if each option will have an effect on you or the company. So if that particular option will definitely have repercussions for you or the company, it would most probably not be the best answer. So you would have to try to pick the answer which has the least repercussions on yourself and the company. So that would be my advice in dealing with these situational judgment questions. So again, your position may vary depending on the questions. Sometimes you are the leader, like you could be the supervisor or you could be the employee. I still remember doing one question about this situational judgment. I just don't remember which scholarship body it was for, but I think it was something about insider trading. Basically, the question said something about your friend left the company and then he started selling the company's secrets, the old company's secrets, to the new company he's working at. And the new company that he was working at happens to be a competitor of that old company. So what would you do? So they give a few selections. So basically it's like, would you reach out to the higher ups to take like legal action against your friend, even though he's close to you? Or would you just tell him to and go up to him and tell him that, this is not cool, you shouldn't be doing this, or you don't do anything? So I still remember having to struggle because coming from an all-boys school, I think technically SVP in general, you would understand like the, jangan kantoi and like don't snitch on your friends kind of thing. But kind of assessments, I don't think your reviewers of your test results appreciate this kind of mindsets, like not telling on your workmates, for example. So be sure that you pick the answer that would least affect the company and yourself. So in that case, I had to pick the one where I went up to the higher ups to report to them about insider trading legal company. I think it's just something to think about. You have to put your old mindsets behind, leave your old high school mindsets in high school, wherever you come from, and start honing your brain into thinking like a real worker, a real employee. If you were put in that situation, what would you do? So yeah, that's basically all for personality test and situational judgment. And I think I'm passing it to Hannah next.
Thank you, Zach. Next slide. All right, so the next type of assessment, which is usually common in interviews as well, is a case study or presentation. Now, this is a very essential part because this is basically how the sponsoring body sees how you work in a team and under certain pressures in situations. So be sure you guys practice maybe in the mirror, talking to yourself, maybe when you want to set up a plan, or even just practicing your speaking skills. So over here, it's to test your problem solving skills again, to for critical thinking as well, and your ability to work as a team, which is very important because they don't just want to see someone who works independently on their own, but also someone who is a good team player. All right. So they through these case studies, they also these scholarship bodies are able to understand your thought process and how exactly you approach a certain problem. That's why it's very important for you guys to plan it out the best you can and try to work together with your teammates, because once again, it's a team thing, and you don't just want to be dominating the entire case study or the entire interview with your team. So a couple of tips that you could use is, of course, delegating the task among your team members. And this is very important as well, because if you have to at least have one person to try to assign delegate the tasks among your team members. And if in the case that no one really steps up, then it's vital for you to make that first move. Now, I say this not in the sense that you become over dominant, but that you make the first step, because otherwise your interview is not going to go anywhere and you're not going to start. You have to start with something, and it's very important that someone makes the first step so that the rest of the group can carry forward and keep on going with the flow. All right, and another thing is also managing your time properly. So there is usually a time set when it comes to preparing your case studies or your presentation, and also a specific time limit for the presentation itself. So be sure you guys take note of that. Maybe assign a timekeeper to keep track of the time. And of course, the most important point is to be outgoing. But like I mentioned, don't be too over dominant. You want to, the sponsors would much rather see someone who's able to not just become a leader, but also someone who provides opportunities as a leader to other people in their group members to present their points. All right. And in the case of case studies, another thing that you guys could also take into account is you could use, for instance, Google Slides. Now, it's not necessary, but I would say it's a plus point as well, and it gives you an advantage because it makes your testers impressed, essentially. So that's one thing that you guys could use as well. And because, like, for instance, Google Docs, Google Slides, you can share it with your team members. You guys can work on it like simultaneously. So that's one thing that you can do. But if say you don't have enough time, then that's fine, but just delegate the task and make sure each team member knows what they have to do. And also try your best to get everyone involved, because you don't want to leave anyone out. That's really important. And this is also very telling of your character, whether you're someone who just wants to like dominate everything, or whether you would like to be able to present yourself, but at the same time provide that opportunity to others. So yeah, take that into account. All right. And next slide. Okay, and these are a couple websites that you guys can actually try for the assessments. So you've got Numerical, Verbal, Diagrammatic, and Situational Judgment. And it's usually paid, but there is also a free practice test that you guys can try. You don't have to do that many tests, as long as you manage to understand, like get a gauge of or an idea of how the test works, and that's fine. You don't have to know it like super deep or super well, as long as you understand like the gist of it. All right. So I believe that is all for assessments.
All right, so we're coming back to another round of Q&A. I have a few questions directed for the interviews. Interviews. So the first question is, where can I find common interview questions? Well, I think I did not talk about this earlier. So technically, you can find common interview questions online. You just have to search common interview questions and answers if you want. And honestly, there'll be a list. Like I just did a quick Google search like before I answered this Q&A, and there are so many websites which tell you about what are the common interview questions. And I think the next question that I was asked is also, are there any examples of very common questions? So like I said, you can find all this online, but I'll just read some to you. You have questions like, tell me about yourself. What do you want? What do you want from this scholarship? For example, what do you want from this scholarship? I'm just changing it a little because like the question is, what do you want from this company? So they may ask you, what do you hope to get out of this scholarship? What can you bring to this company? What are your greatest strengths? What are your greatest weaknesses? These are like very, very common questions, but do not be surprised that you may not even get asked these questions because somehow in interviews for scholarships, it may be very different from a job interview, despite me saying that it is actually a job interview, if you think about it. But try not to, although it doesn't hurt to prepare for these common job interview questions, do not expect everything to come out, because honestly, what they can ask you is very, very different from what you see, what you can find online. So I'll just give you an example that happened to me during my scholarship interview. It was during my UEM interview. I think they asked me to tell them about myself first, and then right after that, there was no common interview question anymore. So like, even if I prepared like 50 common interview questions, I only used one. So the other questions were like, because I did talk about in my essay that I was very interested in finance, that I did, dabble around in the stock market a bit. I use paper trading. If you guys know what paper trading is, if you don't, it's fine. Unless you're intending to do finance, then you have to know what that is. And then like after that, the interviewer just asked me about, oh, so what do you paper trade? Do you paper trade stocks? Do you paper trade foreign exchange? What do you do? So I had to explain to him like, oh, I do it on the Malaysian stock exchange, the KL stock exchange, KLSE. I do a bit of forex as well, but I'm not too strong in forex, but I'm more confident in the Malaysian financial markets. And this is why what I did to analyze the stock market. Basically, it was something off, like I didn't expect as well. So like I said, it does not hurt to prepare for common interview questions, because it really depends on your interviewer. If your interviewer is someone of a really high position in that company, they would most probably not ask the common questions, because they know that that is something you can prepare beforehand. They want to see you like think on your toes, think on your feet, like, just be on your toes every time, like to be prepared for any question that comes your way. So the questions could be really, really difficult, not to scare you again, but it could be something that you talked about very little bit, a bit, like maybe it was just one sentence in your essay, and they can spend 20 minutes interrogating you about it. So like I said, I really don't know what they can ask you. So it's not much of use to ask me what they usually ask in the interview as well. But I would say the most common interview question that I got throughout the other interviews from other scholarship bodies as well was, tell me about yourself. So basically just introduce yourself and like say what you did. That is the only similar question that I got for the other scholarship interviews as well. So like I said, there's not much you can do to prepare per se, but it doesn't hurt to prepare because you never know who's your interviewer. Yeah, so I think that's the first two questions. I do have another two questions. First one, the next question is, how is the individual slash group interviews? Okay, so group interviews is usually an hour plus. Like for my UEM one, it was an hour plus. The other scholarship bodies also, it was somewhere between an hour to 1.5 hours. So I wouldn't disclose so much about my scholarship because tomorrow you guys will be having a session from YUEM as well. So you can save that curiosity for tomorrow. But it's just 1.5 hours and you do group presentations. You may have to, in a way, debate against each other in a friendly way. But yeah, that's about it for group interviews. Individual interviews, it really depends also. Like usually the common like practice of providing interview slots is 40 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes. But like for myself, for most of the interviews that I did, my slot was maybe only 40 minutes, but it went on to an hour. And usually if it goes on to an hour, they would have to stop it because there will be a next person they have to interview. So it should not go more than an hour, but if it happens to go on more than an hour, don't panic. It's only because your interviewers are having fun talking to you. And that's a good thing. So like, I think I'll just share this very personal experience that I had just to encourage you a little bit and not to be intimidated by your interviewers. Like for my UEM interview, I was interviewed by the CEO of the Yayasan UEM and also the UEM group, one of the directors from the UEM group, who happens to be a CEO of another branch of UEM. So like if any of you are intending to apply to UEM, just read up on what they are and then you understand what I'm talking about now. So definitely being interviewed by a CEO and also a director is quite scary. I've never talked to people of that high level before. I've never had friends who were of that level or friends' parents who were of that level. So like for me, it was something really new. And to be honest, to be really honest, I was intimidated at first. But I think everything went a bit when it became really smooth when I made the director laugh. I think it was from that point onwards, I was like, okay, he's human also. He's like me. It's just that he's older and he's a director. That's all. There's a difference. But he's human juga. He laughed. He laughed at my quite a bad joke, I would assume. I don't even remember what the joke was now, but like it was quite a bad joke. Almost like a dad joke, but like he laughed at it. So like for me, it was like that. It was that point where I was like, okay, interviewers are also humans. They can laugh. So yeah, just be quite chill about it. Don't panic too much. It's like I said earlier, interviewers are not as scary as they seem. Yeah, so that I hope that answers that question. And moving on to the last question, are all interviews providing us I'll keep the last one short. Sorry, I just saw the last question is, are all interviews providing us to use English or in just particular interviews? I can't speak for every interview body, but like if I'm not mistaken, JPA and PNB does allow you to use English and BM, but like usually you can just talk in whatever you're comfortable in. It doesn't really matter. So if you're comfortable in English, speak in English. If you're comfortable in BM, speak in BM, but definitely not Mandarin and Tamil, because that is not a language everyone understands. So just keep it to BM and English. Yeah. So I think that's all my questions, and I'll pass it to Hannah next.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, first question. Do do we have to sit for when you're applying for a scholarship? For your information, you do have to sit for English international exam when you're applying for your university applications, but that's not something that you guys have to worry about now. So yeah, that's just focus on your scholarship applications, and the English international test is not something that you have to think about at the moment. Right. I find helpful for actually, okay, for me, for in my case, I found that the most useful ones was of course referring to the actual scholarship portal itself, because that was where everything required for the scholarship was listed. So that's one thing. But in terms of tips, I would say maybe you could browse through like College Law or even Base Initiative, because there are a couple of things there on the Base Initiative website as well. And there are even like a few YouTube channels, YouTube videos of people talking about their scholarship experience. So that's something that you guys could check out as well. And even if you search up scholarship articles, there are plenty on the web. So if you search something up, maybe in particular like Shell, or you just search up that scholarship name, then you will definitely find it. Okay, next one. If our SPM result does not match the requirement, but it's just so near yet so far, is it still recommendable to apply? Okay, this one is a bit subjective because I can't say for sure. It's really up to the scholarship body whether they want to accept it or not. But there are some instances, some cases where even though you get an A minus, say in BM, you like some people I know did manage to secure that scholarship, but it's not something that's set in stone. So don't take my word for it. Just take it with a grain of salt. But it's definitely worth still trying to apply, because you really never know. Even if you think it is very close but does not meet the prerequisites, just just go for it, because you really don't know how the outcome may be, and you might just get the scholarship even though it's not doesn't entirely meet the requirements. But then again, don't get your hopes up too high. Just be realistic about it, but always try for the opportunity. Okay, next one. Do scholarship bodies actually prioritize SPM results over co-curricular activities achievements, or vice versa? Okay, I would say that SPM results is important in terms of you being able to meet the requirements. That's the first part. But what sets you aside from other people? Because you're in a pool of so many applicants, so many of whom have gotten such stellar results, and this is what differentiates you from the rest of them. This is what sets you apart. So that's why co-curricular activities and all these involvements, extracurricular involvements, it's what really makes you special in the eyes of the scholarship body. So both SPM results and co-curricular activities are equally as important, because you can't just provide your extracurricular activities without a solid academic results. So just keep that in mind as well. Keep it balanced. Okay, one more thing is leadership, an important aspect when applying for a scholarship. I think there are certain characters to being a leader that does come in helpful, especially when you apply for a scholarship. Like for instance, in the case of in case studies, because it allows you to like showcase the best version of yourself. When people think of leaders, they usually think of people with like some of the best characters, right? So maybe leadership, I would say yes, I would say it is an important aspect when applying for a scholarship. But say you're someone who is maybe slightly timid or shy, that doesn't mean you don't have a fighting chance, because it's really, like I said, how you choose to portray yourself and how you choose to display your character in the eyes of the interviewer. So that is what is most important. It doesn't matter what kind of personality you have, whether you're someone who's super extroverted or whether you're someone who's introverted, because in the end, it's how you perform during that interview. So leadership, I would say yes, but the characters of being a leader is what is most important. All right, I'll pass it on to Karim.
All right, hi. Okay, so the first question that I got is, do we need to write an essay to impress the reader or make it easier to them to understand with our point? Okay, as for this part, I would say both of it are just as equally as important. But if you would ask me, I think the second part is like really, really important. That's like the number one, the numero uno for the essay part. Because like no matter how impressive your essay may be, but if it's your point isn't there, like for example, if they wanted something about A and then you were talking about B so expressively and it's so amazing that your essay has become, but it's not what the scholarship wants, then it's not going to be a great essay overall. Yes, your language may be really good, but if your points aren't there, then overall it won't be a great essay. Okay. Next is what makes an attractive personal statement essay. So maybe like maybe you've heard this almost everywhere, whereby you should like have a hook for your essay, which means that the introduction is the most important part of your essay. You have the introduction, the content, and the closure, right? So for the introduction, try to have a hook, like make your recruiter, the one who is going to read your essay, would want to read more. If you have a boring and mundane essay, maybe like halfway through your essay and they're already done, and then they would like go to the next essay instead. Because like you have to keep in mind that like scholarship applicants, it's not just like 10 applications, you know. Sometimes it could be like 20,000, 10,000, a lot. Try to make your essay as stunning as possible, because this is one of the ways how they would want to eliminate you from other amazing applicants. And then next is, do you have examples of successful scholar essays? As for this one, you can try to browse at collegela.com, collegelah.com. Yeah. And maybe you can also like try to browse on the internet a sample of scholarship essays. Basically, during this period, you might need to do a lot of research. So do it. Guess that's all from me. I will pass it to Zach.
Okay. Hi again. I'll be taking another 3 questions. Hopefully, I'll be keeping it short this time. So the first question is, during the interview, during the group interview, what exactly will happen? Like, will there be someone asking questions for us to discuss? Yes, there will be a few like interviewers per se. So basically, like how it would happen is like they may split you into, let's say you have a really big interview group, right? Let's say 20 people in one group. They may split you up into 4 groups of 5, for example, and then they'll move you to breakout rooms, and then you have to discuss within that breakout room, and then you come back later to present it to all the interviewers. So while you're in that breakout room, there will also be like an interviewer just supervising. She or he won't be saying anything, they'll just be there analyzing what happens in the breakout room. So yeah, there will definitely be a person who gives you the topic to discuss for everyone to discuss, and then it goes on from there. I hope that answered your question. Then the next question is, hi, I'd like to ask, what if the experiences that I have is not really relevant to the degree that I intend to pursue, and I don't have any other better experiences? Should I include those experiences? Honestly, at this stage of your application, you don't exactly really need to have an achievement or experience that would describe why you want to do that course. Because like, let's say you want to do engineering, it's like you don't really need to have an experience. But let's say you could have like something that you read online, even if it's a short thing, like a small article, a one-page article, and you read and then suddenly it made you interested. You could include that. That's also an experience. It doesn't have to be like a life-changing moment where like, or I'm sorry. The example that came to my mind was someone passed away, and then like that is why you want to do it. It doesn't have to be as like it doesn't have to be as dramatic as that. It could be something very simple like reading an article or even hearing someone talk like about that particular course, and then you suddenly just eavesdrop and like you were interested. It could be anything. And honestly, even for myself, like I initially wanted to do law, but rarely is law offered by these sponsorship bodies, and I didn't even get offered law for UEM. I got offered finance because I did want to do finance as well. So like honestly, just be prepared for whatever they give you. It doesn't really matter as long as you think you should be okay with adapting to that particular course that they give you. It should be fine. So yeah, I hope that answers your question as well. And next question, the last question that I have is, what is the dress code for interviews? Is wearing a blazer needed? It's up to you again. There is really no dress code per se, as long as you are presentable. Don't wear a t-shirt, obviously. Try not to wear polos, but I would highly suggest for guys and for ladies, a blouse, a proper blouse, a dress, or if you want, you can just put on a blazer. For guys, I would suggest you shorts that try to select a tie color that is not too flashy, but in a way this may not be good to say here, but like try to a tie that kind of shows your dominance. So for me, what I did was I wore a red tie, like a maroon tie, a dark maroon tie, and I felt that maroon tie gave me like very committed to certain things. So like that was my personality. So I wore a red tie. So I would suggest you to do some research on like how color affects psychology when you're in an interview, because that I feel that does help. It may not affect your interviewer's like impression of you, but at least it gives you some assurance that I'm really myself when I'm in that interview. So like that's just some tips I have for you. Yeah, code normal clothes will do. Normal, like how you dress up for school, that should be the standard lah. So yeah, that's all I have. So okay. Just to add, you may get like certain requests from your sponsors, because apparently last year JPA they got asked to wear the PJK punya attire. So if your sponsor doesn't specify, do what I said. But let's say if your sponsor suddenly asks you to turn up in some another attire, just follow. There's no wrong with following exactly what they say. But if they don't specify, just try to do like what I said. A shirt will do. If you want to feel a bit more safe, you wear a blazer over and wear a tie. Or for ladies, you just wear a blouse, a normal dress, or if you want, you can wear a shirt as well and a blazer over that. It shouldn't matter. And we have last question. What kind of research should we do before coming for an interview? Should I try to match my answers to fit the individual scholarship body visions? Okay, this is actually a really good question. The research, like I said, is you research on current affairs. That's one, because they could ask anything under the sky. It could be anything. Even if you're an engineer, suddenly they can ask you about cryptocurrency. So like they could ask basically anything. But like if you're talking about company research, just try to read up what the company does. So like let's say you're applying for YK, try to know what a sovereign fund is, what they invest in, what are their interests in, what is their role in Malaysia as a sovereign fund sovereign fund. If you're applying for PNB, that the same thing applies. You're applying for Sime Darby, what is SIMW, what do they do? If you're applying for UEM, what is UEM, what do they do? This kind of research. And you can definitely find all this information online. I found all these information online, so you should be able to as well. You try to match your answers to fit the individual scholarship visions. Um, I would say that it's actually quite hard to find out what your scholarship body vision is, because their plans are like in the 10s and 20 years forward kind of thing. So you most probably will not know what the vision exactly is, but I think it is more applicable towards like, for example, if they ask you, this was a question that was asked in my UEM interview, like, what do you think is the current trend in Malaysia now for business? And then I told them ESG. So if you don't know what ESG is social and governance. It's basically a new trend in managing businesses. So like I happened to come across an article on what UEM was doing in the newspaper. Like they were trying to comply to this ESG as well. So I managed to be able to include the example of UEM applying ESG within their business model while describing about what I think is the business trend in today's world. So I think it's not really much of like an individual kind of answer and try to fit it to the vision, but rather try to use things that happen to the company, the latest news in that company, and apply it to the more specific questions that they ask you. So like, for example, like I gave you just now, like what do you think is the business trends in today's world and how will it affect companies in Malaysia? So then you could use the company as an example, and that will give them the impression that, oh, you do know about this company, you do know what's going on. And like, I'm not sure if I said this earlier, but if your company that is sponsoring you, like for example, companies like Astro, SIMW, UEM, and if you're applying to any of the bank scholarships, they are usually public listed. So what I mean by public listed is they are on the stock market. So it's even easier for you to find information about them. Like I would recommend websites like The Edge. The Edge Markets is a really good website to find out about company news, especially if it's public listed. Or if not, you could just search up the financial reports, the annual reports. Go to Bursa Malaysia, find that company's annual reports and see what they've been doing like for the past year. That would be good enough for you to know what they're doing. I know it sounds a lot, but I mean, if you're desperate enough, you go to desperate measures to research. So yeah, that's all I have for this question. Okay, so yep, thank you guys for listening, and okay, so now I think we'll be continuing the next section. Someone else will be coming in to present for the next session. So yeah, all the best, guys, and good luck for your applications.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final session of today's webinar. My name is, so the purpose of this presentation is to introduce you guys to a new collaboration between Base Initiative and Directory Pendidikan, which is under Solidarity Pendidikan. So yeah, today we're going to be introducing our program, which is called Mentor Biasiswa. Next slide. All right, so hi everyone, my name is Aizat Zulkarnain. I'm the head of Base Initiative for this year. And Ida, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Ida, and I am the founder and managing director at Solidarity Pendidikan. However, primarily an A-level student at Summit College KL.
Okay, so there are 7 agendas overall within this presentation. So first off, we're going to start with introduction to Solidarity Pendidikan and Directory Pendidikan. And second, problem statement to why we want to do this program. And third is introduction to Mentor Biasiswa itself. 4 is the program components within our program. 5th, aims and expected outcomes that we want to achieve by this program. 6 is how to sign up for this program, and 7 is mentee filtration and pairing.
All right, so before we get into elaborating on the project, I'll be taking this chance to introduce Solidarity Pendidikan, who I believe we ideated the idea in the beginning of January. So Solidarity Pendidikan is a student-led project that aims to advocate on issues that affect stakeholders' well-being by presenting facts and stories to the forefront. Apologies for the background noise. I hear that. We're primarily focusing on social media activism to highlight the reality and propose solutions. And we're constantly working towards creating a safe space for our targeted stakeholders by increasing stakeholder outreach. Now, apart from our social media endeavors, we've also conducted a few community service. One of our prominent community service projects was what we did last year, which was Bantuan Bahan Pendidikan Darurat Banjir, where we raised about 37,000 ringgit, I believe, and conducted a few donation drives. Now, under Solidarity Pendidikan, apart from the main advocacy project, which you will see as our main Solidarity Pendidikan Instagram, we also have two other subsidiary projects under the bigger organization, which is Microphone Pelajar, an upcoming podcast, and Directory Pendidikan. So Directory Pendidikan is where we've parked Mentor Biasiswa under. Directory Pendidikan essentially aims to be the one-step destination for everything education. Long way to go to fulfill that tagline, but inshallah boleh, which essentially aims to be a more journalistic and creative component to the bigger Solidarity Pendidikan picture, and hopefully to involve students like you guys or other education stakeholders into our program. So we have DP General, which is our website, and it has all of the different components here, but also DP Special Events. And one thing that would be relevant to you guys as scholarship hopefuls, apart from Mentor Biasiswa, would be the Siri blog Lepas SPM, where we've collected a few scholars, we've centralized a few scholars to help share their stories. You guys can check it out there. Okay, now to the main crux of why we're here to present to you guys about Mentor Biasiswa. So with every project, there's of course a problem statement with our targeted audience in mind. So scholarships, as all of you may know, is one of the most amazing transformative education aids out there, especially for whether it be the students, in order for students to achieve greater heights, especially if their socioeconomic background will not permit them to do so. Now, despite scholarships being the education aid that they are, you have your merit-based, you have your need-based, as I believe was explained to you earlier this morning. But sometimes, the information gap that exists doesn't make it a fair game. or the different support systems that we may have, which could also be related to one's socioeconomic background, or maybe just the school, the type of school that you went to, the people that you're able to surround yourself with, that can all create like an unfair game. So having our targeted stakeholders in mind, issues that we could think of were like, maybe you wanted to fly overseas, but you never knew how, or you're going to undergo the scholarship process, but it's all so scary and you don't know if you can like finish through the application. So with all of these different issues and different struggles that students may have in mind, we created Mentor Biasiswa. So Mentor Biasiswa is a mentor-mentee program between SPM leavers, such as you guys, undergoing the scholarship application process, and Malaysian scholars. So as of right now, we have about 60 scholars acting as mentors across 12 different sponsoring bodies. We also made sure to diversify the pool, looking at aspects such as the different undergraduate or career courses that they're pursuing, the pre-university course that they're taking, the different college institutions, and hopefully this gives a rather diversified and interesting pool of people that will be guiding you guys throughout the entire process. And what Mentor Biasiswa does, it essentially supports you guys. We're not going to be spoon-feeding you the answers to everything for the scholarship. Otherwise, that's rather counterintuitive to the goal of the project. But instead, it's mainly to inform and support, as Isaac will touch on later on. So there are a few different components to the program. It's not just the mentoring. There are also other aspects as well. So when it comes to the main mentoring session, as of right now, it would be one scholar to 2 or 3 mentors. Now, this is highly dependent on the number of applicants that we receive, and more so on the number of applicants who are eligible to apply for the scholarship application process. We're trying to make sure that, it's the least amount of mentees to mentor, but we also want to ensure that we're trying to help as many people as we can. So you will receive individual or group consultation sessions, and this depends on your mentor, but also your needs as a mentee as well, since you are the star of the show. We also know that although the scholarship application processes are mostly in English, some scholarship bodies may do their interviews in Bahasa Melayu, some may do it in both. So we wanted to make sure that you guys feel comfortable throughout your entire mentor-mentee application process. So although maybe the main crux of the work that you'll be doing would be in English, however, our mentors are prepared to talk in the language that you're most comfortable of. So if you're more comfortable to converse and portray your ideas in Bahasa Melayu, then do feel free to do so. We just want to make sure that you're comfortable, you're being safe, and most importantly, that you're being heard in terms of your concerns and your dreams, etc. But I also want to highlight that your mentors are not there to translate everything for you. Please don't do that, all right? Like, disclaimer, awal. All right. And apart from the main mentor-mentee program, you will also gain a system of support. Now, this support will not only be between you, your mentor, and the other mentees that are under the same mentor, but also for the whole entire Mentor Biasiswa community as well. You will gain access to a Discord server meant for Mentor Biasiswa, where all the mentors and mentees are centralized in one area. And this is where you guys are able to discuss, share your resources together, share your concerns, and really support one another. This also allows you to gain insight from other mentors as well. Analyzing our signups so far, I do know some of you, maybe you're rather undecided between like accounting or dentistry or engineering and economics. I know if you are, don't worry about that. I know some scholars right now who are still deciding between those two as well. So this is where the Discord server can come into play, because you only gain access to one mentor, and your mentor might already be specialized in a specific area. So you don't worry about that, because you will have the Discord server, and the mentors will be helping one another as well, in helping a mentee if it's not their specific area of focus. And lastly, for components, you will have exclusive access to a leadership workshop by another one of our collaborators, 30,000 Hours. They will be specifically focusing on how to portray leadership skills through the different scholarship application components, such as essay writing and interviews. And, very interesting. We're only limiting that to all those who sign up for Mentor Biasiswa. And so, don't miss that chance and do sign up. And with that, I will hand the presentation over to Isaac.
All right, so let's move next to the aims and expected outcomes of this event. All right, so is getting everyone a scholarship the main aim of the program? While it is the preferred return that participants might want, our main aim is to inform and support mentees in hopes that they will be more confident to see the journey to the end. Like Ida said just now, we will not be spoon feeding you guys with like essay ideas. We won't be writing the essays for you, but we will be doing our best to maybe find a better way to structure your ideas. So yeah, and throughout the program, we will be collecting quantitative and qualitative information from our mentees so that we can keep up with their progress. All right, so on the quantitative side, we'll be updated with the number of mentees that pass on to the next stage or even secure a scholarship. So we can gauge the success rate of our event. And qualitatively, we hope to help you guys with soul searching and career decisions, like Ida mentioned just now. Like maybe some of you guys are still deciding between 2 or 3 different degrees to pursue in later. So we hope we can truly relate to those who are still not sure what they're going to pursue in their tertiary education. And also as a group of people who have been through that before, we hope to guide you narrow down your options later. Other than that, we also hope to polish your skills in essay writing and interviews, because these are the skills that you will certainly need further down the road in life. Maybe for applying to jobs, for applying to universities. These skills will always come in handy when needed. All right, finally, we also aim to boost your confidence level throughout the application process, because we value the journey more than the destination. So having a smooth journey will certainly get us to the destination better and at a faster rate, I hope. All right, next. All right, so I'll be explaining about our sign-up process. But before that, just a reminder that tomorrow is the last day to sign up. So make sure to spread the words to your friends about this and apply this program together. So there'll be 2 links for you to fill up. Links will be shared later through Basis Instagram, and you can also see it in the slides. It's on the left-hand side there. Register at the link and also submit your results at the other link. So there will be 2 links for you guys to fill in if you want to apply to this program. And so what happens when we receive your application? First, we'll determine who is eligible to apply by considering your SPM grades and targeted courses. But further filtering of mentees will also be conducted. We have the details down there. Things we will be considering are SPM trials and actual SPM results. We'll be looking at the type I went to, because the harsh reality is that regular daily schools have less exposure to this type of information than other elite schools. So we have to consider that as one of the filtering factors. And we'll also look at the area in which you guys live in and the occupation and education level of the parents. So second, we'll match you up with a mentor. Our method of pairing mentors with mentees is by matching the intended field of study by the mentees with mentors who are already in that field. So let's say you are applying to engineering, you'll be paired with a mentor who is currently studying engineering. And likewise, if you are still undecided, like if you are planning to apply maybe a degree in economics or engineering, then you would probably be paired with someone who also had the same experience with that. And we'll also look at the scholarships that mentees would want to apply to and match it with mentors who have experience in that particular scholarship. Next. All right. So this is the mentee sign-up process. We already started since 13th of June up until 15th June. That is when we open up registration by using SPM trials results. And since yesterday is the SPM results day, we are starting to collect SPM results for those who already applied, because like I said before, it will be used to filter out all the applicants. And upon submission of SPM results, we will continue with filtering the applicants. It would take place from 16 June to 18 June. So basically, we'll go through the filtration process that I explained earlier. And by 18th June, we would email the applicants who did not make the cut to join the program, and we will begin the onboarding process for successful applicants. And they will also get to know their mentors by 19th of June. So just a little bit of recap, 18th June, you would know if you don't make the cut to the program, and there will be an onboarding session for those who make it to the program. And by 19th June, you will get to know your mentors. All right, so finally, all those who make it to the program will have to attend opening night at 8 p.m. on 19th of June. Next. And this is the general timeline of Mentor Biasiswa's program. I'll call it MB for short. We'll kick off our program on the 20th June with our first mentor session. It should last between 20 to 24th of June. We don't really have we don't have a specific time where all the mentors need to meet their mentees, but rather we give a time range so that mentors can meet up with their mentees at a time that they have agreed to. And next on 25th June, we will be having a workshop with 30K hours, which is the NGO Ida mentioned just now. 30K hours essentially focuses on developing students' self-leadership skills. So if you guys want to know more about this organization, do look up 30K_hours on Instagram. All right, up next, we will have our second mentor session between the range of 27th June to 30th June. And after that, for wrapping up, we will be doing a postmortem data collection internally to make improvement, to see what improvements we could make next year. Okay, next. Okay, but what happens if I don't make the cut? Let's say what happens if someone who applied to this program don't make the cut. So we don't want to give up on you, and we certainly don't want you guys to give up on yourself. So it really depends on the capacity of mentors and why you were not selected. So there are two reasons as to why this could happen. First, maybe your SPM results were insufficient or signups exceeded our capacity. We're looking into providing a one-off consultation session with a scholar who could encourage you to keep on trying. But this is still pending. We are still in progress of making this happen. And the second is not confirmed yet. We'll announce on the DP Instagram, but we need to see the capacity of the mentors and plan out other parameters. So let's say if there's so many mentees that are eligible, but there's just not enough mentors, we might have to take in another round of mentors and see if we could do like a round 2 to this program. All right, next. Ida, you want to take from this slide?
Yeah, all right. So thank you, Isaac. So that's technically the end of the presentation, and we'll now open up the floor to any questions that you may have. And in case you zoned out or you forgot anything, I've created a little summary here for you to check out. Yeah, so I guess we'll open up the floor to questions.
All right, we received one question now from Ain Rizwan. How long does one mentor session last? Ida, you want to answer that?
Yeah. So one mentor session should be about 1.5 hours. So for further insight as to how we structured the program. So essentially, each mentor has a minimum requirement, a minimum standard that they need to achieve in terms of what skills they should be setting. What skills should they be discussing with you, or what it is that they are to discuss with you in each session. So we've created a session suggestion for the mentors, which is about 1.5 hours for both session 1 and session 2. However, it is up to the discretion of the mentor in terms of how long they want to make the session, or if they want to have more sessions after that. However, the minimum requirement and responsibility of the mentor is to only conduct a 1.5 hour session during that first week and a 1.5 hour session in the second week. If you are a mentee, I'd like to say in advance that your mentor does have their own life outside of program Mentor Biasiswa, but supposedly at the start of the mentorship, boundaries in terms of communication and how comfortable your mentor is to talk to you outside of office hours should be discussed. So to summarize back up, 1.5 hours of mentoring for each session, so 3 hours fundamentally, but more hours are to be discussed with your mentor.
We also have another question here by Nurhana. Can IGC SE leavers sign up to this program or only for SPM leavers?
Okay, I believe can. But once again, this goes back to the scholarship application process. I apologize. This is a lack of information on my part. If GCSE applicants, are they allowed to apply for scholarships?
Yes, some scholarships do take GCSE students to apply.
Okay, yeah. So in that sense, depending on the scholarship that you're targeting to apply for, if they accept GCSE grades, then yes, we will let you in. Or let's say there's a mismatch in terms of you're a GCSE student, but the scholarship body that you aimed for does not accept GCSE grades, then maybe the mentor will suggest you to sort of pivot your plans a bit and target for another scholarship instead. And if your question is related to, so how do I submit my results? Still submit within the same forms, but just mention that you're an IGCSE student, or you can tell it to your mentor later on if you forgot to mention it in the Google Forms.
Yep. And we got a third question here. What is the deadline for registration for mentees? So like I said just now, the deadline for registration of mentees would be tomorrow. So do gather your friends, your classmates, your cousins, or anyone who is applying to scholarships. Let them know about this event and you can apply to this event together.
All right, so I believe that is all the questions that we had for today. So thank you everyone for joining our session, and also good job for waking up early and attending this today. So just reiterating once again, we have the registration links up here if you guys do want to sign up for Mentor. All announcements for Mentor Biasiswa will be shared on the Directory Pendidikan Instagram and via email for those who have signed up. So if you're not the type that checks your email, you got to start checking it now. And for further information, you guys can, on Directory Pendidikan and Solidarity Pendidikan as a whole, you guys can check out our card links It has everything. Or if you want to reach out to me personally, those are my personal details as well. I am open to discussions, whether it be regarding to mental biasiswa, SP, or anything else that you might want to know from me. So yeah. And Isaac?
Yeah, that is it, guys, for today. This marks the end of our first day for this 2022 webinar. So see you guys tomorrow for a more scholarship specific session. You guys will be hearing talks from scholars who will be representing their own scholarship bodies. So tomorrow, I think it starts at 9 a.m. So you guys might have to wake up 1 hour earlier so that you guys don't miss anything. But if you guys do miss anything, we will be keeping the live on our YouTube account. And also we will be sharing the slides after each day on our Instagram page. All right, that is it, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.